Welcome in. Welcome in. I am your host, Ben Hostler, and we are here to give our first look the Week 5 NFL DFS slate. Today's video is once again brought to you by Rolling Insights. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video, subscribe to the Rolling Insights YouTube channel, head over to rollinginsights.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, hop in our Discord server that's free. Make sure you're interacting, create a free account, play around with SportWise. There's some more data spaces that I'll be showing off kind of in both in the content and on the live streams. We do live streams every single week, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and then Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern prior to lock. So make sure you guys are tuning into those as well. And thank you guys for tuning in to these videos. Coming off a pretty good Week 4 slate, once again, 3-1 in cash games. It was another winning week in DraftKings cash games for me this past weekend. And it was also another winning week over on FanDuel. I told you guys last week that FanDuel, for whatever reason, has been really fun this year, making DFS great again for me, especially in the cash game department. And so we're 4-0 on FanDuel to start the year, and we are 3-1 rather over on DraftKings. So just a quick recap of the lineups this past week in DraftKings cash games. I played Drake May, James Cook, Omarion Hampton, Puka Nacua, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, Brenton Strange, Christian McCaffrey, and the Tennessee Titans defense. It finished with 168.02 points. I think on DraftKings, the big decision was kind of, whether you were going to play Devontae Adams, whether you were going to play James Cook. That was like kind of the main, I guess, like debate points by the time we got to Sunday. James Cook ended up being around like 40-ish, 41, 42% owned. I was a little worried, not for tournament purposes, but for cash games with the Devontae hamstring injury. I just didn't want to mess around with it. So, and I thought James Cook was arguably the safest play on the slate, and there was enough value to fit him in. So I don't typically play the same. I don't typically play two receivers on the same team, but I did that this past weekend in cash. And then over on FanDuel, very, very chalky week in FanDuel cash. I think if you didn't play this team, you probably like made a mistake. And I would say you probably, I don't know. I don't know how you didn't play this team in FanDuel cash. It was the most clear team of any week this year, in my opinion. Brock Purdy, Omarion Hampton, Cam Scatterbo, Chris Olave, Jacoby Myers, Puka Nacua, Tyler Warren, Christian McCaffrey in the Texans defense. And it scored 161.56 points. It was also a great week in tournaments for me. First big week in tournaments. Didn't have any big wins, but had some legit sweats in the afternoon slate. Profited a good amount. Had Ashton Genty on a FanDuel team, and he was very low owned. He was only around 20% owned on FanDuel and, went completely nuclear. He actually may have been lower than 20%. I'd have to go check. But that was a big separator for me over on FanDuel. And then on DraftKings, I talked about it. I had some issues with the live stream on Sunday morning, but I went live for a little bit on Twitter and talked about Judkins and St. Brown's mini correlation. Both those guys did really good. Had a lot of James Cook, had a lot of Omarion Hampton, and I had a lot of Ashton Genty over there as well. So it was a great week in tournaments, great week in cash. Let's see if we can keep the good momentum rolling here into Week 5. And with it, let's get into the Week 5 first look lineup builder. All right, so for Week 5, we have 10 games on the main slate. The bye weeks have set in. So we only have a 10-game slate. Looking at the games overall, there's also a London game as well. So that takes the Thursday game, the London game off the main slate, and then you have obviously the Sunday night and the Monday night. And then with bye weeks, we're getting just 10 games. When we're looking at the main slate here, 40.5 total in the Texans Ravens, 41.5 in the Giants Saints, 44.5 Dolphins Panthers. Then we get a high total here, Raiders Colts, 47.5. And then again, Broncos Eagles, 43.5. Cowboys Jets, 47.5. Tennessee and Arizona, 41.5. Tampa and Seattle, 44.5. Washington and Los Angeles Chargers, 48.5. Lions Bengals, 48.5. So once again, the good games, and when I say good games, I mean the higher totals, 2 of the 4 are in the afternoon window. And the last 2 weeks, it's kind of been a big emphasis that on those slates, all of the good totals seem to come in the afternoon. It was the case last week. And once again, we're getting a 248 and a halves in that afternoon window. And there's 247 and a halves in the 1 o'clock, and nothing else is really high whatsoever. So some interesting kind of dynamics there when you think about potentials for late swap and, stuff that you can kind of plan around in the tournament side of things. As far as cash games, we will get in here and start building our first look lineup. There are some injuries. Jaden Daniels, we don't know if he's going to play. He's missed the last 2 games, and, he would be in one of those high total games in the afternoon. So that is noteworthy. We get no Lamar Jackson this week. Sounds like he's going to miss a few games with that hamstring strain. The Baltimore Ravens are they're marked men right now. They have so many injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and then they lost Lamar as well. Like, just a disaster season so far for the Ravens, a team that was the Super Bowl favorites coming into the season. And a lot of people had very, very high expectations that this could be the year that they get over the hump. It still can. Like, we're just now on the first day of October, but they have had a large amount of defensive injuries that's really, really tough to overcome. And with no Lamar, I mean, I don't really see how you can expect this team to win games without Lamar Jackson, like at this, as it currently stands, because some teams, can rely on, I guess, like defense or just other factors in the games. And, the Ravens, they can't do that at this current stage. So with no Lamar Jackson, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see kind of what transpires there for the Ravens. But no Lamar at the top here, and then Jane Daniels maybe no either. So we might have no quarterbacks over 7K on the slate. As far as running back goes, not a lot of injuries on this specific slate. So we obviously have like the obvious ones who have been out, that being Joe Mixon, Tyrone Tracy, Tyjae Spears, those guys. And then Braylon Allen got hurt on Monday Night Football. He's probably going to miss for the Jets in one of the higher totals of the week. And then we have 2 big question marks here, that being Trey Benson and Bucky Irving. So Trey Benson is already operating as the Arizona Cardinals lead back because James Conner is out due to injury. Apparently, he got banged up towards the end of that Thursday night game. Now, he's had extra rest to get ready, so we'll see how his practice report looks as we progress through the later parts of the week here. But if he were out, I mean, that would leave you DeMarcado, Michael Carter, like those guys. That would, DeMarcado's right here at 4,700. That could provide some extra value. And then as of today, Bucky Irving was seen in a walking boot on crutches. They said they don't think it's going to be a long-term injury, but they are taking him week to week. I would assume he misses this game against Seattle. Now, this is a tough matchup, but that's going to give you Rachaad White at below 5K. Sean Tucker is going to come into play a little bit as well there. And then on the wide receiver side, CeeDee Lamb still out, Mike Evans still out. Now Tyreek Hill is out for the Miami Dolphins. That's going to open some stuff up in their wide receiver room. And then Terry McLaurin remains to be seen if he'll be able to get active and play in this one. So let's start off at quarterback here and kind of go through things. You have Jalen Hurts at the top here. You have Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott. So really, like, when we're taking some of these, like Josh Allen's not on the slate. Now we don't have Lamar on the slate. Probably don't have Jaden Daniels on the slate. There's not a lot of these dual threat guys at the top that we are scared of fading. So oftentimes when we have these slates and you have Lamar, Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen all on the slate, it's a little bit harder to want to sacrifice and go down to a cheap price point at receiver, like maybe down in like this range, because you're fearful that those guys at the top are capable of throwing and running multiple touchdowns in and really burying you. If we're taking these guys off the slate and it's just Jalen Hurts, we don't really have that fear. I think you can comfortably play any quarterback on this slate. It's going to come down to efficiency with these pocket passers. And, if you pick right, you can get ahead of pretty much everybody. You do have Justin Fields there at 56 who has, rushing upside. But yeah, so here's kind of my thoughts. I think if assuming like Lamar doesn't play, assuming Daniels doesn't play, I don't really see myself wanting to play Jalen Hurts in cash game formats just with how bad the Eagles offense has looked outside of one half of football against the Los Angeles Rams. So, and then after that, it's all these like pocket passers. So I think you can kind of take your pick here. I think Jared Goff's going to end up pretty high owned against the Bengals. I could see Justin Herbert. He's ended up being pretty popular the last few weeks in GPP. I could see him getting some ownership as we progress throughout the week here, especially with that being one of the better totals. And then I think you kind of look at this Dallas and the Jets game. I think that's where the majority of the ownership is going to go. 47.5 total. You have Dak Prescott there, and it's a very clean situation for both of those teams in terms of who you want to stack with. If you're playing Dak, you want to put in George Pickens, you want to put in Jake Ferguson. That's really it. When you're playing Justin Fields, do you want to put in Garrett Wilson? That's about it. You can play Justin Fields by himself. So that's kind of where I think a lot of this ownership is going to go. You still have Daniel Jones at home there in a high total against the Raiders. But I think you're looking at Dallas and the Jets for the bulk of the kind of cash game ownership here. I lost 1 week this year on DraftKings and cash games, and it was a week that I stupidly played Justin Fields over anybody else the week that they played the Bills. So it kind of like stings for me to say that I'm considering going to Justin Fields again. But the Dallas defense is just a total disaster. Now, it's only 400 more to get to Dak Prescott. So I think the floor on Dak, we know, significantly higher. He does not have the same rushing ability as Justin Fields, but he has less inherent risk that their offense is just going to bottom out and they're not going to put up any points. They're not going to move the ball. I don't necessarily think that's the same case as it was against the Bills, against this Dallas Cowboys defense, but there is still risk there. But I think you're looking at Dak or Fields for cash games as of Wednesday morning. I'm not going to plug in a quarterback yet. I want to move on to running back, receiver, fill in those spots, and then we'll come back and kind of see who we can plug in at the quarterback spot. Also, shout out Coke Zero. Seen some comments on the live stream about me always drinking a Coke Zero on the stream. If Coke Zero wants to sponsor the DFS First Build Show, have your people reach out to my people. I would appreciate it. Moving over to running back, we have JT at the top, followed by Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, and then like Derrick Henry, assuming Bucky doesn't play there at 72. So kind of an interesting group. We have no McCaffrey on the slate, so we don't have to just instantly plug him in. Jonathan Taylor has kind of become a mini version of Christian McCaffrey, I would say. We've seen a couple quote unquote floor games from him, and those have been 13 and 15 DraftKings points, which is that's pretty good. Now, the receiving is never going to be McCaffrey level for Jonathan Taylor, but getting 4 or 5 targets, his last 2 games, 4 and 5 targets. If you get that every game from him, that's all you need, because Jonathan Taylor's never had a receiving floor whatsoever, even though coming out of Wisconsin, I thought he was a pretty good pass catcher, and that's something that he could showcase at the NFL level. He's never really had the chance to do that. 4 and 5 targets a game would be fine for him. It's a good spot for them at home against the Raiders, so I definitely think Jonathan Taylor's in consideration here, as well as Jahmyr Gibbs. Really good game there against the Bengals. Jahmyr Gibbs just continues to do it every week. One of the best players in all of fantasy. I trust both those guys over Barkley. And then you have Devon Achane here. Good spot against Carolina's terrible run defense. Like, the problem with Achane has been just inefficiency on the actual runs that he's had. You would assume that efficiency can increase a little bit against a really, really bad Panthers run defense. And then you also have added kind of a floor of an increase in his short to intermediate targets, potentially with Tyreek Hill off the field. So Achane, Gibbs, Taylor, all at the top of running back look like really, really strong plays to me. Moving down to the mid-tier, love Genty in tournaments again. Don't think you can get there in cash over someone like Omarion Hampton at home against the Commanders. Played him in cash last week. He's a little bit more expensive, but I think you go right back to him this week. So I'm going to plug Omarion Hampton in to the first look lineup build. There's some other strong mid-tier plays as well, like Cam Scatteraboo against New Orleans could be a really, really strong tournament play. Breece Hall in that Jets game with potentially no Braylon Allen. They're still going to mix in Davis. Like, they're not going to just run one running back. But at 5,600, I'm definitely interested in Breece Hall. And then you have Rachaad White with no Bucky Irving down here. So I'm going to assume as of Wednesday morning that Bucky Irving's not playing in this game because that's what it sounds like. So I'm going to plug in Rachaad White into this. Now, I think you could go up to Jonathan Taylor or Gibbs or Achane, or I think you could play Breece Hall. So what I think is going to happen by the time we get to the weekend is it's going to be like a debate. Rachaad White, if Bucky is out, is going to be like a lock and load at 4,700. So I think the debate will come down to, I'm going to plug Achane in as well. I think he's a pretty good play. I think the debate will come down to Hampton versus Breece Hall. Like, do you need the money or whatever? I think that'll be one of the debates we have heading into the weekend. At the receiver position, St. Brown at the top, Jamar Chase at the top. St. Brown has had a fantastic role. Really, really strong fantasy role for him. I know a lot of people had questions about that coming into the season with the new OC. He has really just dispelled those concerns. Really strong, 7,900. No Puka on the slate either. So, this is the first DK Cash week without like CMC Puka, like just plugging those guys in. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what teams people build. But I like St. Brown at the top. I like Jackson Smith in the jig, but I know he had a down game on that game against the Cardinals. Down game being only 13 DK points, but he got there at the end of that game on the last drive. He had less than 10 points for the majority of that game. George Pickens against the Jets. Deebo Samuel potentially with no Terry McLaurin again is definitely in play. He's had a really, really strong start to his season, 22, 17, and 20 in 3 of his 4 games. You also have Garrett Wilson there at 6,100. Looks like a really strong play. He's going to be popping for some high ownership. Let's see. Quentin Johnston, Tedero McMillan, Keenan Allen, Jacoby Myers. Again, Jacoby Myers at 5,600. Again, elite play, in my opinion, per dollar. And then Ladd McConkey all the way down at 55. Definitely interested in there for GPP. Jalen Waddle at 54 with no Tyreek Hill is probably going to be pretty high owned. So I'm going to plug him in. Again, love the kind of mid-tier at receiver down here. Olave off a down game back in the dome. Definitely think you could consider him at 52. Even though Michael Pittman at 51 looks interesting to me. Darius Slayton with no Malik Neighbors all the way down at 4,300 looks like a pretty good play. So I see some strong value plays at both the running back and the receiver positions. That's going to create probably some interesting spots in tournaments. I would need to think that through all the way. But let's move over to tight end, and then we'll come back and fill in the rest of these spots. So Trey McBride at the top here against Tennessee, Brock Bowers, Jake Ferguson, Tyler Warren. I think all those guys are strong plays. McBride, with the amount of value I'm seeing, it may be a McBride in cash week again. Played him in cash a few weeks ago. It worked out fine. It might be a McBride week again, to be honest with you, just with the amount of value I'm seeing. Yeah, don't really want to mess around with like Mandrews with Cooper Rush at quarterback. Zach Ertz is fine. Juwan Johnson's fine. Darren Waller, I kind of talked smack about him on the stream on Monday, came out 2 touchdowns. He proved me wrong. He is honestly, obviously he's not dust because he scored 2 touchdowns in an NFL game, but I thought that was hilarious. I thought he was just done. I didn't even think he would like play that much. I can't believe he scored 2 touchdowns. That was crazy. But I guess you could some people might consider him those game log watchers out there. I don't know. This might be a McBride week for me. I'm going to plug him in because I see a strong amount of value on this slate. So we already have 3 running backs that I love plugged in. We have Jalen Waddle for value at 54. I think we can comfortably put McBride in there at the tight end spot. As far as a defense goes, I mean, like Saints at home against the Giants is probably fine. Both defenses in that game, Giants against the Saints. We'll just put the Giants in. So that would give you 5,800 per position left. Let's see. So we could put in Dak or Fields. I'll put Dak in. And then at receiver, we could go with like Jacoby Myers, who I said was a really good play. And then that would give you 58. We could move defense down and put Garrett Wilson in at 61. And yeah, we can just use like whoever I said Saints. All right. So again, things can change throughout the week. We'll have a lot of injury stuff to work through on this slate, it appears, even though it's only a 10-game slate. But for the first look, Week 5 NFL DFS cash game lineup, Dak Prescott, Omarion Hampton, Rashad White, Jalen Waddle, Jacoby Myers, Garrett Wilson, Trey McBride, Devon Achane, and the Saints defense. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you made it to the end of the video, please drop a like on this, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments who your favorite early look Week 5 NFL DFS play is. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see everybody on the live stream on Sunday morning.